Hello and welcome to another episode of Longevity Kitchen. Today we are finally getting to the roast, which is one of my absolute favorite things to make. I see it as like the secret sauce to your week. It's something so comforting to cook on the weekends. Ideally, like I love to do it on a Sunday. And it just warms the house with its smells, and you know you're going to have this super comforting meal that night. And then what I love even more is that I know I'm going to have leftovers for the week ahead, and that is just so nice. I don't know about you, but I'm not somebody that can eat the same dinner every night. I tend to kind of eat the same thing day in and day out throughout the day. And by nighttime, that's kind of when I want to do something a little more creative. So I can't really make like one meal and have it every night. I would rather make something like a roast that I can then use that protein in different types of dishes throughout the week. So when I make my roast, I try to think about what would I like coming, to do with the leftovers, so in the coming week, what would I like to eat? And I am craving tacos. So I really, for sure, want to use some of the leftovers for tacos. If for some reason I have any more leftovers after that, I want to make a pho. And one of the reasons I love to make the pho is that I usually have the sweet bone broth on hand. And hot tip for you guys, it makes a wonderful pho. I mean, we tend to think of it in that sweet greens latte, but it's really got all those spices that are kind of traditional in a pho. And then, you add like the konjac noodles and a bunch of veggies in there. I've got some fermented veggies I'll add over the top, and some cilantro, and then some spicy meat. And that spicy and sweet flavor together is so addictive, at least for me. And then for the tacos, I know that I would like to make some pico de gallo and some guacamole. I won't do that in this video, but I will do a follow-on video that shows you how to make pico de gallo and what I call cheater guacamole. Super easy, but we'll do that in a follow-on video. But any of your roasts you can always make into tacos. That's kind of like the super easy thing to do, but or salads. You can always use that protein and any veggies you might have hanging around in a salad. So that's it. Like always be thinking that can be done, and you can vary the flavors, by different salad dressings or different veggies, and same thing with the tacos. So I know for sure I want to make tacos, and I know that I want to make the pho if I have it. So I want that meat to be spicy. I want these elements to be kind of spicy for that. So because of that, that's how I'm going to think about how shall I marinate, or, what kind of rub should I do for my roast and my veggies. So again, I'm just trying to give you kind of the structure and how to think about a roast. It's like, well, if you don't want spicy, then maybe you just want like a salt and herby rub to it. Salt is really great, by the way, on meat, especially something like a rump roast, because they tend to be a little bit tough, and you do have to cook them very low and slow. And that salt really helps tenderize the meat. So whether you're doing salt in a wet brine, which is usually like salt and water, you may have done that with your turkey. With beef, it's typically better to do a dry brine. And so you can mix like salt and different spices and rub that all over the meat. And then as it cooks, it helps tenderize those muscles. I am going to do more of a glaze today because the chipotle peppers are kind of in that adobo sauce already. I'm going to add quite a bit of salt to that and some olive oil. And then I'm going to just kind of do some cuts through this fat layer here, and then I'm going to rub the whole thing in that glaze. Then we're going to take our onions and our sweet potatoes. We're going to cut those up, and I'm going to toss them in whatever glaze I have left. So they're going to be also quite spicy. Wonderful. It'll just be a wonderful, spicy night tonight, I suppose. And if it's too spicy for you, then you can, dial back. Or another way to kind of take away the heat is to add some sugar. I'm not going to add any sugar because I'm just trying to kind of keep that pretty minimal in my life right now, but you could add some brown sugar to this. We'll get to making that in a second. Let's talk about our ingredients. So I want to do the beef, and under the beef, while it's roasting, I'm going to have some sweet potatoes and some onions, and I'm just going to do these quite chunky so that, kind of have some nice chunks to eat this evening. And then I'll cut them down a little bit further for in my tacos, which are very good, by the way. Sweet potatoes, onions, a little bit of black beans if you want to make a vegan taco, or, you would just top that with a little bit of beef. And then of course the guacamole and the pico de gallo. Anyway, why are these good for longevity? So let's talk about onions. Onions are very high in quercetin, and quercetin is a senolytic, which helps you detox your zombie cells. So that's great. We've got sweet potatoes, which are high in vitamin A or carotenoids, which are also very good for you. And then both of them are very high in fiber. So these fibers are also very good for your gut microbiome, which is, healthier gut microbiome has been associated with longevity. And then of course the beef. Now this beef is pasture raised. And so as we talked about in the ghee episode, the fat content of here is going to have a higher higher amount of omega-3s. It's still going to have omega-6s, but its omega-3 to omega-6 ratio will be as high as 1:1. Now, I've never, my guy doesn't analyze his meat, but given the pictures that he sends me of these animals out on their healthy pastures, I'm thinking it's pretty high, that there's quite a few omega-3s in here, 2 omega-6s. So it's a healthier content, but of course it's also just full of protein that, we all need for building muscle. And if you're, one of those people like me that's obsessed with counting protein all day long and making sure you get enough for your muscles. And it's also just really, really satiating between the fiber here and the protein. That is the key. A lot of people have asked me about doing something about reducing sugar intake. One of the real things to focus on is not so much what you're not doing, but what you should do. And that would be protein and fiber. That would be my biggest recommendation, because as soon as I focused on that, I became so full at night that those sugar cravings, I wasn't hungry for them, mainly because I was just so full off the protein and the fiber. So think about that. I know that's not, if you have a full-blown addiction, maybe you're not there yet, but that's one key, focusing on the protein and the fiber. All right, so let's get started here. The first thing I'm going to do is just hatch this big fat layer here. We're going to make our marinade, which is just basically, I'm going to take these chilies in adobo. I'm going to take the juice of probably half a lime, maybe a whole lime. We're going to kind of see. I want it to be sort of thick like a glaze. And I'm going to use some olive oil and a fair bit of salt. I've got, you'll see I've got a head of garlic here, and I am actually just going to stick it to the side and let it roast in the oven with everything, and then I'm going to use that on my tacos. Yeah, I don't know if you've ever done that, but where you do a whole head of garlic, and then these little bits, they get super soft, and you kind of like pop them out, like, sorry to say this, but like zits. Anybody who has like a pimple popper, you can pop that garlic out. It's all nice and soft, and it's, you just spread it on bread, or you spread it in my case, I spread it on the tortilla, and it just adds that extra layer of like, something super good. All right, so we're gonna get started here, basically making our marinade, our meat, and then chopping the sweet potatoes and the onions. And then when it's all ready and about to go back into the oven, I will show you what we're gonna do. As far as the oven temperatures, let's talk about that. We're gonna start this at a 375 degree oven for 30 minutes. Now that's pretty high. We could even go a little higher, but because I only have about 2.5 pounds of meat here, I don't wanna go any higher. But so I'm only going to do that for about 30 minutes, and that's going to just kind of like dry out and seal all the juices in the meat. In theory, that's what it's doing. And then we're going to turn it down to 225 degrees, and we're just going to low and slow roast this, and it'll probably take another, 2.5 hours to cook. Now that's the fun thing about roast too, is that you just, get a meat thermometer, and it'll tell you when it's done. So I'll show you how we're going to put the meat thermometer in there. We want the internal temperature to get anywhere between 125 to 140 degrees Fahrenheit. These things will all be in the show notes, by the way, but and 125 kind of being on the medium rare side, and then the kind of well or medium well is like the 140. So I'm going to just do 130, because it also cooks a little bit once you bring it out of the oven too. Kind of sometimes the temperature can still come up. So I usually pull it out at about 130, and then I just let it rest. But we'll get into that in just a bit. So for now, let's first make our glaze. I'm going to crisscross our meat, and then we'll make our marinade. So I'm just going to cut into this fat layer. If yours doesn't have a fat layer, I don't know if you even need to cut into it, but most rump roasts have a a layer like this. And you could just cut into that, just helps that marinade get into down into the muscles a little farther, especially when you have a big fat bit like that. You want a nice sharp knife too. As much as I love the expensive knives, because I have a kid in the house, I use these Ikea knives, and then I can just not worry about if I do a bad job sharpening them. Anyway, so highly suggest these knives from Ikea if you've got kids in the house, and then you just get their little knife sharpener, and they're weighted really nicely. So we're just gonna leave that for a bit, and let's make our marinade. So I'm gonna take, I've got 2 chipotles here. Fun fact, and maybe I'm sure you guys already knew this, but that these are just smoked jalapeno peppers, which I think is freaking cool. So, and I'm gonna do, so there's a little bit more of a chunk in there. So I've got 2 chipotles and just maybe a little bit of the adobo. I want this to be kind of thick, so I don't want to do all of this. And then we're going to do half a lime. Let's see. Got my juicer here. And that's going to keep it from being too thick, the lime juice. So I don't want to do tons. I'm probably not going to, probably about a quarter of this I'm using, or half of the half. So a quarter of the lime is getting used. I can always add more. And I'm just making this up as I go along, as you can see here. I'm going to put some olive oil in there. And we'll grind this up. But I'm going to start with, let's see, maybe a couple tablespoons of salt, or teaspoons of salt. Now, as far as the amount of olive oil I added, that was probably about 1 to 2 tablespoons. That was probably about 1.5 tablespoons. So let's start with 2 teaspoons of salt, and that's Himalayan sea salt. Okay, and then we're going to just grind this up and see what the texture is like and how it tastes. And I'm just kind of making this up, again, based on, you know, obviously previously having cooked several things in the past, and knowing what works and what doesn't. So, okay, here we go. Now again, if you don't want this to be so spicy, you could add some sugar to it, and that'll kind of quell the heat a little bit and makes it kind of spicy and sweet. And actually you could also add sour cream to it. That would be really good. That lactic acid is really good in tenderizing the beef as well. That's really good. I don't know if you can see the thickness on that, but that is about what we're looking for. So that's what we're going to use. I'm going to just rub this meat down with that. Take this out. And there'll be people have asked me for links to like some of the equipment. I do put links to the equipment in the show notes. So if that's something you're interested in, you know, I just put in either the things I have or the things I would, you know, replace it with. So I'm just gonna do this. And I'm a big one with using my hands for a lot of this stuff. Just, you know, obviously make sure your hands are clean, and then obviously you're gonna wash them afterwards. Before you pick up any kids or any of the things you might be doing. Okay, so that kind of gets down into it, and I'm just going to do the whole thing. Okay, and you could easily put this on chicken as well, or any kind of meat. Again, just, you know, kind of make it up as you go along, but see what happens. Okay, so you could try to peel these perfectly now, but they are going to peel a lot more easily once you've cut them down a little bit. So I usually wait until I have them at least halved, and then they'll peel a little more simply. Okay, so again, onions full of quercetin and a specific type of fiber whose name escapes me, but just know different plants have different fibers, and the more you can vary those fibers, the more you're varying your microbiome, because different, as I call them, happy bugs, feed off of different fibers. So that's kind of cool, isn't it? So you can see that peels so much more easily, doesn't it? And actually, I'm just gonna do something like that. Cut these ends off a little bit and hope that they sort of stay together. If they don't, that's okay too. Now I have my trash right there, but if you like to stay pretty neat while you're cooking, a nice way to do that too is to have like what's called a trash bowl next to your cutting board. And so as things build up, you just throw them in the trash bowl, and that's quite, you know, makes things stay kind of tidy. I like to be tidy while I cook. I know that there are some people that are famous for sort of just making a tornado in the kitchen. There's one person in my family who I've just started calling him the tornado. But anyway, you know, teenagers, they are funny. Okay, so peel that. This one I'm going to chop a little bit more. Instead of just in halves, I think I'm going to do each half in thirds instead of quarters. Just make it a little bit smaller. You can see I'm getting quite tornado-ish, aren't I? We'll do thirds on this one. Ooh, maybe okay, no, we're gonna do quarters. We're gonna see what happens. What the heck? Let's live life on the edge, huh? I think when you keep them in larger pieces, they sort of tend to stay together, and then you get those kind of burnt, crispy outsides and the sort of softer, sweeter insides. But we're gonna see what happens with this. Ooh, okay, those are getting quite, put those in my bowl. Oh, gonna have to start crying. A trick to that, actually, to the onions being, you know, really, I guess it's that gas or whatever that, you know, stings your eyes. A trick to do, which I did not do, is to put them in the fridge overnight, and that can really help. Kind of basically just makes those gases a lot smaller, so it takes longer to get to your eyes. Oh, this is like really bad. Okay, let me peel the potatoes and all right, so let's just chop the potatoes. So I'm just gonna do these a little bit bigger, only because of the size of the onions. So are those about 1.5 inches or so, a little over 1 inch. And I'm just gonna kind of cube everything. Again, we really don't need perfection. The only reason that you wanna keep things sort of even in overall volume per piece is so that everything cooks together at the same time. When you have varying sizes, different things, certain parts can burn and other parts aren't cooked. So that's kind of why you want to keep things uniform. But I also think it is kind of nice when you get those little crispy bits and then, other parts are soft. So, you gotta balance that. Like when you go to those, whenever I watch those like Parisian, classically trained chefs, I think it's so amazing how uniform they can make everything. But at the same time, like the food that I crave is really just the kind of home cooked, imperfect, like imperfectly perfect food, I guess. So, and again, I think you can see my knife skills aren't all that, but hopefully they'll come along, right, as time goes on. Okay, so I'm going to add these to my onions, and I'm just going to toss them in that glaze. Now, hopefully you can see that here. I'm just going to toss them in the rest of that glaze and put them at the base of our pan. How cool is that? Like 2 for 1. So again, this is quite spicy. If you wanted, like I said, to cut the spice, I think sour cream or yogurt could be really useful there. It helps calm the spices down in your mouth. And then, like I said, the lactic acid from your from the yogurt or the sour cream also helps tenderize the meat. So you could do that if you didn't want it so spicy. I'm actually going to add a little extra salt to this. we'll just fit what we can at the bottom of the pan. And if it doesn't all fit in one pan, you can just, you have an extra one. Now, you can line the pan with foil or something, but I tend to just kind of, I don't know, I like it. I like it. It does mean a little bit more cleanup, but it also means that that pan can get flavored too. Okay, so you can kind of see I'm just gonna do that, and then I'm gonna take my roast and I'm gonna put it on the top, and then I'm just gonna sneak this in here, and I'm gonna pour a little extra, actually no, I should cut the top off. Excuse me here. Out of practice, but with roasted garlic, you need a sharp knife, and you just kind of cut the top off, and we'll put it like right here, and then I'm going to pour some olive oil over the top of that, and we'll get our oven preheated and the thermometer in here. Olive oil on the garlic. Okay, and each one of those cloves is going to get so nice and soft. Okay, and that's fast. That's it. Okay, I'm gonna get the oven. Oh, let me show you how to put the thermometer in. So my thermometer is quite old, but it's just, you know, basic. I have a setting here and a thermometer, and you always want to put it into the thickest part of the meat. Okay, so, you know, I don't want it sticking off the top, because then it's capturing more the temperature of the oven, but you want to kind of get it down into the center, thickest part of the center of the meat. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna put this lovely, look how lovely that is. Isn't that gorgeous? We're gonna put that in the oven. Okay. There we go. And then I'm just gonna bring this up to the top. Let's see, we'll close it and bring it up a little bit. Okay. Now I've set the timer for 30 minutes. Here, actually, no, I'm gonna turn that down. And at 30 minutes, I'll come and turn it down to 225. So I've started with 375. It's gonna go for 30 minutes. Then we'll turn it down to 225 until it's ready. And I'll just use my handy dandy thermometer. Again, this is very old, but it does still work. So if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But I'll put a link to a better one in the show notes, because I'm sure this is not even available. Okay, so you can kind of see, it shows me my oven temperature, it shows me my food temperature, and then this is the setting that I want my food to get to. That's the most important thing. The oven temp, I just have it at 350 for right now, so that's not as important to me. Okay. Okay, our roast is done. There it is. You can see our food temp, 131, just a little bit more than I like, but so I'm gonna turn it off. I'm gonna turn off my oven, and then we're gonna take it out, and we just need to let it rest for a little bit, so I'm gonna cover it in some foil. I'll show you how I do that in just a second. Okay, here's how I tented it. Let me show you our beautiful roast here. So, that is the beautiful roast. We're gonna let it stay at room temperature for quite a bit here, maybe like 20 minutes minimum. And the reason you wanna do that is you just want all those juices to kind of mellow out and cool off. If I cut it open right now, right out of the oven, the juices would just come flowing out of that, and then you'd sort of lose any juiciness in your meat as well as your leftovers. So we just wanna keep it tented. You don't want to, how do you say this? You don't want to cover it fully. You kind of just like a tent like that so the air can escape. Otherwise, you'll create another oven and you could be cooking it, and then you'd be overcooking your meat. So we're just going to keep it tented like that for about 20 minutes, and then we will carve it. Okay, so our roast has been resting and it is ready to carve. So I'm going to pull that out here, and then we're going to put the veggies. I'm going to pull off the roasted garlic. So just so you know, you can kind of see each little clove will pop out of there, and it's really nice and soft, and you can just smush it onto bread, or like I'm going to do with my taco shells, and just put that at the base of the taco. It is absolutely delicious. And then there is some juices down at the bottom here, and I'm just going to keep the veggies in that juice. Now you could maybe pull that off and make a gravy. I'm not a huge gravy person, and I'm certainly not with this. I kind of just like it. I know maybe there's a lot of people out there shrieking right now, but I'm just not much of a gravy person. So this is going to be enough, and then that kind of, it'll be a really spicy jus there that can go with the meat. So let's see here. Let's see how it turned out. Take the end pita. Yeah, you can see that turned out really nice. Hopefully you can kind of see how nice and rare, or I suppose medium, that is. Perfectly cooked. Now it's got that layer of fat along the top, which, you know, when you're eating, you would just cut off, but this is how I would serve it. Let's see, probably do, now I would probably serve it with a salad because I love like greens as well, but you could do some cooked greens. But I would just, for this evening, I would just have the sweet potatoes and the onions, just a little bit of that. So look at all that fiber and the quercetin and all those good things. And then just a few pieces of meat. And again, there's, if you need something kind of liquidy over the top, there is some in there that you could use, but I don't know, I kind of like mine sort of plain with just some salt and pepper. And then I would serve this with a big salad, and in the salad I would probably put just a little bit of chev, I think, just to balance out the spiciness of the chipotle. It just needs some kind of cream, and I don't do too many of the cow's dairy, so I would probably use a chev cheese in my salad, and that would just kind of balance out everything. So that is it. I mean, how easy is that? Like, you just pop it in the oven, go about your business for the day, and then dinner is ready, and leftovers. So again, you know, to make tacos, I would just chop this maybe a little thicker. Let's see here. Chop off the fat, and then I would cut it into little pieces, you know, small enough that you can get them in a taco. So you just kind of cut them like this, and then I would actually just saute it up in a pan or heat it up in the oven like that. It's kind of, not exactly, I mean, I'm not going to go so far as calling it carne asada, but it would, you know, it's still going to be absolutely delicious. And then what I would still put on the taco, I would put the garlic on the taco shell. And I love the taco shells from Siete. They have those almond flour ones. That's a good one. Then you would heat that taco shell up, brush it with the garlic. Then you're going to put your steak in there. Then you're going to put some sweet potatoes and onions over it, and that is delicious. And then if you have some black beans, you could put that on there too. It's probably getting a little bit much. And then of course you've got to top it with the pico de gallo and the guacamole, and that recipe is coming in the next video, so you'll see how to make that too. Okay, you guys, I hope this gives you some ideas. If you have any other ideas for leftovers with roast beef, by all means, put it in the comments. Again, we can learn from each other. If there's something you'd like me to make or show you how to do, please make sure to put that in the comments too. I hope you